Hey, Dan Beagleman here. This video is on the Aeolian Mode. It's the 6th video in a series of 7 videos on the modes based off of the major diatonic scale. In this video I'll talk about the chemistry or formula for the Aeolian Mode. In other words, what makes it sound the way it does and different than other modes and scales. I'll talk about using it in different applications, soloing, improvising, ideas for composing music. We'll look at the correct key and the correct chord or chords you can use the Aeolian Mode with, and I'll also get into showing you how to mix the Aeolian Mode with the Pentatonic and the Blues scale. Okay, on to the Aeolian Mode. What gives the Aeolian Mode its own unique sound? Every scale, every mode has a formula, a chemistry, or a sequence of steps that gives it its own unique characteristic sound. The sequence or the formula for an Aeolian Mode is whole, half, whole, half, whole, whole. Alright, what does that mean? After hitting the first note or the root note, the next note will be a whole step higher, then a half step higher, then whole step, half step, and following that sequence. Remember, a whole step is equivalent to 2 frets and a half step is equivalent to 1 fret. I'll demonstrate an Aeolian Mode on the 2nd string, the B string, and just play it on that 1 string so you can see horizontally that series of steps works. In other words, the 1 fret, 2 fret thing I was just talking about. Okay, here's an Aeolian Mode on the 2nd string. B Aeolian Mode. So I'm going to start with the 2nd string open, and then I'll go a whole step higher, a half step, whole step, half step, whole step, and we put that together. It's this. That's a B Aeolian Mode. Okay. Now, if you look at this mode, or actually, if you look at the notes I just played, I have B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. Okay? I have 2 sharps in here, C sharp and F sharp. What key has those 2 sharps in it? Or what scale? The key with 2 sharps is the key of D major, or a D major scale. So a B Aeolian Mode has the same notes as a D major scale. And remember, the major scale is also, you can call it the Ionian Mode. It's the first of the 7 modes. So that's the interesting connection there. B Aeolian is the same as D major or D Ionian. Now, as I just mentioned, the B Aeolian Mode is the same as a D major scale or a D Ionian mode. There's a phrase called relative major minor, if you're not aware of that term. Every key, in a sense, has 2 keys associated with it, the major key or the relative minor key. Kind of like 2 sides to the same coin. If I use C for an example, the key of C major has no sharps or flats. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. Here's the C scale, C major scale. C to C, no sharps, no flats. The A minor scale, or the A Aeolian Mode, has the same note setup, no sharps, no flats. Here's an A Aeolian Mode. So C major or C Ionian Mode and A Aeolian or A natural minor has the same notes. Again, like 2 sides of the same coin. So that's a concept, again, I said, it's called relative major minor. In other words, G major is the same as E minor, C major is the same as A minor. So if you're looking at it from the perspective of the major root note, if I think of C major, the relative minor to C major is A minor. C major, A minor, G major, E minor. 2 sides of the same coin. So for an example, if you look at a piece of music, if you read music, and you see a key signature. Let's say I look at a piece of music and I see 1 sharp, and I haven't played the piece, I don't know what it's going to sound like. I wouldn't know by seeing the 1 sharp if it's in the key of G or the key of E minor. I would have to play through the piece somewhat to see what key it's in, because 1 sharp would mean the key of G major or the key of E minor. If it had no sharps, it could be the key of C major or the key of A minor. So of the 7 modes, those 2, the Ionian and the Aeolian, kind of have a unique thing going on there as opposed to the other 5 modes. Okay, and you'll see this later when I show some pentatonic scales, how this kind of fits into play here. So again, relative major minor means two sides of the same coin. Every key, in a sense, can be looked at two different keys, the major key or the relative minor key. There are plenty of positions for playing the Aeolian mode, as for like any other scales and modes. But here is a very user-friendly one, sort of almost like a go-to, if you will, pattern for the Aeolian mode. And the nice thing about this is later in the video, when I show you about connecting the Aeolian mode with the pentatonic and the blues scales, how it sits right in the same area. Okay, I'll use B as an example, the key of B. So here's a B Aeolian mode. I'm going to be in position 7. Okay, now one thing about this particular pattern, in position 7, I'm covering frets 7 through 10, but there's one note that is going to be outside that position, and I have two choices to play it, and I'll show you as I get through. The first way I'm going to play this, I'm going to have to, as I said, I'm in position 7, I'm going to have to stretch my pinky out 1 fret to the right for string 4. So here's this pattern of position 7, B Aeolian mode. So when I went to string 4, I had fingers 1, 3. I can't use my pinky right there. I would have to pull it up 1 fret to get that C sharp in this key. So again, here's B Aeolian mode, stretching my pinky out on string 4. Now there is another option. If I don't want to stretch my pinky out on string 4, I can get that same note, that C sharp, by getting it on string 3 and pulling my first finger back to the left 1 fret. So in this case, here's a bit of a different fingering. Now instead of this, stretching the pinky out, I'll get that note on string 3 and then okay, so here in that case I stretched my first finger on string 3 back 1 fret and then pulled it right back. Now I'm in position 7, as I said. If you do this, you got to be careful when you pull your first finger back to fret 6. You don't want to stay here, because then if you continue on that way, you may lose yourself in the fingering and hit some notes you don't want to hear. So I like to use the term stretch. In other words, don't move your left hand to the left. Just stretch your first finger a bit to the left and then pull it right back. So these fingers and your thumb kind of lock yourself into place here. And the reason for this is when you want to use these scales, kind of get them into your head and hands like muscle memory, especially if you're doing some like really fast shredding type stuff. You don't want to take a chance and maybe be in the wrong position. So at least that's the way I kind of like to look at this. Keep yourself in the right position, stay there, and if you're using the first way I showed you, stretch your pinky out to the right 1 fret, or stretch your first finger to the left 1 fret on string 3. So it's something to keep in mind. Okay, as I said before, the two sides of the same coin thing, B Aeolian is the same as D Ionian. The first mode and the 6th mode are the same, just two sides of the same coin. Here's this pattern again, B Aeolian mode. I'm going to start on the B note, which is my lowest tone. I'll play to the highest note in that pattern and back to the B note. And there's a B minor chord, and it sounds like it locks in with that chord. Now I'll just start in the D note, which is the 6th string with my pinky, and I'll start there, go to the highest note, to the lowest note, and back to where I started from to encompass or to use up all the notes in this pattern. Listen to this. And there's a D chord, and it sounds like it matches that. So you can clearly hear that although the notes are identical in both scales, the B Aeolian mode and the D Ionian mode, or the B natural minor scale and the D major scale, the difference is using the right key center. Okay, and again, that term relative major minor really shows you very clearly the connection with those two different scales or those two different modes. Now, using the Aeolian mode, you have to consider where to use it correctly in the right situation, the right key, or against the right type chord or chords. The Aeolian mode is a minor sounding mode, and the reason it's a minor sounding mode, meaning it'll work for minor keys or minor type chords, chords in the minor family. And why is that? If you take the basic elements of a chord, major chord is 1, 3, 5, the first, third, and fifth note of a scale. So if here's a B major triad. It sounds major. Okay? Any major chord is built on the first, third, and fifth degree of the major scale. To make a chord minor, you flat the third. So it'll be 1, flat 3, and 5. And it sounds minor. So if I look at the Aeolian mode and take the first, third, and fifth note of the scale, there's root note, the first note of the root, third, fifth, and it sounds clearly like a minor chord. Okay, so B Aeolian or any Aeolian mode will work for a minor key or minor type chords. Now, that being said, there are 4 minor modes that derived from the major diatonic scale. There's the Dorian mode, the Phrygian mode, the Aeolian mode that we're talking about here, and also the Locrian mode, which I'll get to in my next video. The point is, since there are 4 minor type modes, and they'll all work in minor keys, minor type chords, which is the correct one or the type of music. And the Aeolian mode is probably best suited for rock and metal type music. Not so much for blues, not so much for maybe shredding, although you could use it for shredding type stuff. But the Aeolian mode is really a great choice for rock and straight up metal type music. Bands like Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Metallica, things like that. As I mentioned, with any mode you can mix them up with the pentatonic and the blues scales to get more out of your playing. And in this case, since we're dealing with the Aeolian mode, and I mentioned before that the Aeolian mode is a minor sounding mode because it has a flat third in there, it will mix well with the minor pentatonic and or the minor blues scales. I'll use the key of B again to demonstrate this. Here again is the B Aeolian mode I showed you earlier. Okay, here's a B minor pentatonic scale. Some people call it the rock scale. It's your basic go-to scale. I'm sure everybody knows this one. Right? Again, your basic rock blues type scale. Here's the minor blues scale. It's the minor pentatonic, again, which is a 5-tone scale, and this is a 6-tone scale. It adds that passing tone, the sharp 4, the flat 5 to the 5, acts as that, again, as that passing tone, turning a minor pentatonic into a minor blues scale. Okay, now if I look at these 3 scales together, you'll see a lot of common notes. Actually, all the notes in the minor pentatonic scale are in the Aeolian mode, and 5 of the 6 notes in the blues scale, the minor blues scale, are in there. The blues scale, again, the note that's different is that sharp 4, flat 5, which is your tritone there, or sometimes people call it the blues note. Now, the reason I mention this is because since all 3 of these will work in the context of, rock music, as I mentioned, bands like Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, Metallica, things like that. The difference between the minor pentatonic and the Aeolian mode, there's those 2 notes in the Aeolian mode that are not in the minor pentatonic. The second tone, which is the C sharp, and the 6th tone, the second and the 6th degrees. So those 2 notes or degrees of the scale, this and this, which are not in the minor pentatonic, are what gives the Aeolian mode its true characteristic sound. If you left those 2 notes out, you'd have a minor pentatonic scale. Okay, So the minor pentatonic and the minor blues scale are more straight ahead up for like blues music, rock music, of course. But when you incorporate those two notes, again, the second and the sixth, that's what gives, again, that characteristic sound and really, really highlights the Aeolian mode. And again, it really shines when you're using it in a rock, metal type of context. It does not work so well for blues if you're playing the... You go... You know, pentatonic stuff is going to work, but if you went... Ouch, you know, it doesn't really fit in the blues situation. So it's something to keep in mind. The Aeolian mode, great for minor keys, great for minor chords, not so great for blues. As I said earlier, the modes are usually used for soloing, improvising, you know, things like that. But you can also use them in composing situations. You can create lines, you know, for signature lines for songs. In the metal genre, which this mode sits well in, just as an example, the Black Sabbath, I think it's the end of the song, or the second part of the song Black Sabbath, from their first album, I believe, the Black Sabbath album. They play a line which is built off of the Aeolian mode. I think the song is in F sharp, or it might be, they might have played it in G and tuned down a half step, but you know, concert sounding is F sharp. Anyway, so here's an F sharp Aeolian mode, or a natural minor scale. And the line to that song is... Okay, there's your root note, your keynote F sharp, and again, as I said, here that sixth tone, which does not work well in like straight ahead blues music, but that sixth tone really gives it the characteristic sound. When you hear that, you know, yeah, it screams Aeolian mode or natural minor scale. So just some cool things to consider. You can create lines, signature lines, from the modes. They're not just used for soloing and improvising. Here's an interesting thing you can use the Aeolian mode for. Take a band like Iron Maiden, where you have two lead guitar players. Sometimes they play signature lines or recognizable lines, but they're played in harmony. Very, very simple to harmonize a line using the Aeolian mode. Let's say I go to the B Aeolian mode, which I was showing you before. Here's the root note again in the center root note, I should say, of the scale, because this particular scale has three root notes. The lowest note, string 6, the center one here, and, okay, so a little flat there. Okay, there you go, there's that B note. Okay, let's say I just take part of the scale and I play a little line that goes like this. Okay, if I want to harmonize to that line, I have choices. I could do 1-3 harmony or 1-5 harmony. Okay, in other words, the root note here, 1, we're calling that, you know, 1, or the key note there. If I go 2 notes higher in the scale, 1, 2, 3, which is D, the minor third, whatever I do starting from here, I'll just start on this note and follow suit in the scale in the same pattern. In other words, here I'm playing a sequence of 5 notes and returning 1, 2, 3. Now I'll just start 2 notes above, which is here, and I'll follow the same sequence, going up to 5 notes and then returning. Okay, and if I put those two together, it's going to sound like this. So, 2 guitar players can harmonize with each other. One goes, the other, and when you put it together, you have what I just played. And that pattern, or that concept, applies to anything in the scale. It doesn't have to be, you know, just playing scalar in terms of like playing every single note in, you know, following the scale in steps. I could do whatever I want. Just anything, and whatever I did, guitar 2 would just play 2 notes higher in that scale pattern to complement me, and doing that, you would have what's called 1-3 harmony. You can also have 1-5 harmony from the natural minor scale or Aeolian mode. Let's say take that same line again I just played, starting on the root note. Let's say this is guitar 1. I'll just go to the fifth of that, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'll just start here on the F sharp and play that same pattern, same zigzagging pattern, if you will, but making sure I stay within the notes in that pattern for the Aeolian mode. So guitar 1, guitar 2, and if I put those together, it sounds like this. So you can have guitar 1 play from the root note and guitar 2 playing from the fifth, giving you 1/5 harmony, or guitar 1 playing from the root and guitar 2 playing from the third, giving you 1/3 harmony. Now it doesn't matter where you start. Guitar 1, let's say, can start anywhere, but the second guitar playing the harmony above that just has to be 2 notes higher for 1/3 harmony, or 4 notes higher for 1/5 harmony. You can also have 3/5 harmony, which is in a sense the same thing, just like kind of superimposed a little bit higher in the scale. Or if you had 3 guitar players in the band, who has 3 guitar? Let's say Leonard Skinner. Although I don't think that they do things like this, but let's say if you had a metal band or something with 3 guitar players, one guitar player could go, second guitar could go, third guitar could go, and you could have 3-part harmony on a line. And that's all because, again, the basic minor chord, the B minor chord, is 1, flat 3, 5. And when you put those together, you're harmonizing the chord. Now, as you can see, it's very, very easy to create a harmony line using the Aeolian mode or natural minor scale in a rock setting, with 2 guitar player bands like Iron Maiden. The same concept applies with the Ionian mode or the major scale. If you check out my first video in this series on the Ionian mode, I'll show you examples of applying this concept of 1/3 and 1/5 harmony using the Ionian mode or the major scale. And a band that made good use of this is the Allman Brothers Band. That was a big part of their sound, their signature sound, if you will, of creating these really pretty harmonizing lines based off of the major scale or the Ionian mode. Now I'll play a little bit, mixing up the Aeolian mode with the minor pentatonic and the minor blues scales. I'll use the key of B as an example. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave any questions or comments in the comments section below. I'm Dan Beagleman, and that's the Aeolian mode. Have a nice day.